What is up, gamers? We are back because the NBA is back. We have training camp starting up next week, and of course, that brings deadlines, and deadlines bring big moves. So, we have Damian Lillard finally getting traded, and it is not to the Miami Heat. The Milwaukee Bucks are the team that is going to be picking him up. So, we're going to break this down. I'm going to be talking about all three of these teams that were involved in this trade, of course, along with a couple of the other teams that missed out on Damian Lillard that we know were in on the negotiations, as well as potentially what happens to Jrue Holiday and all these other players that are involved. So let's get into it. So let's start with the Milwaukee Bucks. They are, of course, obtaining Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is heading to Milwaukee. That's insane. They are sending out Jrue Holiday, 2029 first-round pick, and then 2 pick swaps. I believe those are in 2028 and 2030. So a couple of years down the line, at the end of this decade, they're going to be having some swaps and an unprotected first in 2029. Who has any idea where the Bucks are going to be by then? I don't know, but really only 1 pick and 2 swaps, along with Jrue Holiday, who's obviously a great player. That's not a lot to give up for a guy of Damian Lillard's caliber, right? He's a guy that's been All-NBA, one of the best offensive players in the entire league, one of the best point guards in the entire league. There's a reason a lot of teams want to trade for him. He's been great for the Blazers for many, many years, and the Bucks are obviously hoping that this pushes them over the edge and back into NBA title contention, because the way things ended for them last year was a little disappointing. Losing in the first round. You can attribute that to the Heat just having a miracle run, as well as Giannis dealing with some injuries, of course, missing a few games in that series. But still, first-round exit doesn't feel super good when you are going into the season as as an expected NBA title contender, one of the top 3 teams in the league. Where most people had them there, right? So you make a big move, big splashy move to get rid of Jrue Holiday, a guy who was key in that 2021 NBA championship. But has some sort of issues. I know Bucks fans have had problems with him. I'm a big Jrue Holiday fan. I think he's great. I think he really fits anywhere. He's a guy that does all the dirty work. He's a great passer, great defender. He can score as well, pretty good shooter. So, we know what Jrue Holiday brings to the table, and there's a lot of teams that are going to be interested in him. So to give him up, it does hurt, but Lillard is a clear upgrade at that same position. He's going to come in, immediately make this offense potentially the best in the NBA. Him with Giannis as a pick-and-roll duo is going to be really, really tough to stop. Lillard, obviously, one of the best shooters in the league. He's going to be a threat to pull at any time. And then Giannis driving to the rim, maybe the most unstoppable player in that situation in the entire NBA. So it's going to be a really, really great pairing. I can definitely see why they made this move, especially with how much they had to give up. Like I said, 1 first-round pick, 2 swaps, and Jrue Holiday. That's not a lot to get a player of Damian Lillard's caliber. I think they can thank the Phoenix Suns for jumping in here in order to get the Blazers enough value to where they felt like this trade was the one to make. Because just what the Bucks gave up alone, I just don't think it comes even close to what Lillard was valued at. But Phoenix came in with some extra stuff that really enticed Portland, and that's really what I think got this one over the finish line. And then let's go to the Blazers. So there's 2 really big pieces here. Obviously, Jrue Holiday and DeAndre Ayton both coming back in exchange for Damian Lillard, as well as the picks that I talked about, and then Toumani Camara, who was a second-round pick for the Suns this season. We'll see if he turns into something. Obviously, late second-round pick, not going to be worth too much. It was mostly just for Phoenix to clear a roster spot for all the players that they're bringing in. So the picks, Toumani Camara, those are potentially future assets down the line. But the big 2, Jrue Holiday and DeAndre Ayton. We've already had a report that Jrue Holiday is not likely long for Portland. They are immediately engaged with other teams on potentially sending him elsewhere. We've heard some name drops of some teams that are interested. The Miami Heat, after missing out on Lillard, are one of those teams. The 76ers, potentially as part of a James Harden thing. We could see that materialize within a couple of days. I'm sure that there's like 4 or 5 other teams at least that are interested that have not been mentioned by name already. So I would anticipate that gets wrapped up potentially as soon as by the end of this week. It could go all the way to the deadline. Not entirely sure. Sometimes these things kind of get drawn out. But Jrue Holiday, if he does stick around in Portland, it probably won't be for long. I would imagine they trade him soon. And so I think it's hard to judge exactly how much they're getting from this trade without seeing what the return for Jrue Holiday is. Because, like I said, a lot of teams are going to be interested in him. I think he has a lot of value for title contending teams. You can maybe get like 2 more first-round picks out of him and like an expiring contract or something. Maybe a younger player on a rookie contract. We'll see what teams are willing to offer. But I think until we see what they get for Holiday, it's going to be tough to really gauge how much value they got back in this trade. But DeAndre Ayton, a young center, they essentially swap out Yusuf Nurkic for him. Ayton's a little bit more expensive, but he's a lot younger, and he's better than Yusuf Nurkic at this point, right? So DeAndre Ayton, I think, is a good piece for them. He can potentially grow with their young cores, see what he turns into in an environment outside of Phoenix, where it's pretty clear that things weren't necessarily working out for him there. Despite drafting him first overall, he had some good moments, of course, but I think it was time for them to move on. So Portland, I like the DeAndre Ayton acquisition for them. I think it will make sense, and like I said, see how he can grow with their young core, with Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson and all the other players that they're going to be bringing in over the next couple of years with some of the draft picks that they have, right? So apart from that, not a ton of draft capital gotten back. Just the one first-round pick and a couple of swaps that are, going to be years from now, right? So we're not entirely sure what the value on those are going to be. And like I said, Jrue Holiday is going to be traded for something. Depends on what that is. Could be a couple of picks in the near future. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But I would say I'm a little underwhelmed by the amount of value the Blazers got back. I think that this is a decent package, maybe like a B plus package that they got back. It's probably a little better than what Miami was offering. I guess the Raptors weren't willing to throw in a couple of the players. Maybe OG Anunoby was never on the table. Obviously, Scotty Barnes wasn't. So not sure what they really could have gotten. But as of right now, prior to the Jrue Holiday trade, I would say that I'm not blown away by the amount of stuff that Portland got back. I feel like they maybe could have done a little bit better, but they waited a couple of months. I think this was probably the best offer that they could have ended up getting, at least what they're thinking right now. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see on the Jrue Holiday return. And then let's go to Phoenix. So very interesting. I was not expecting this necessarily. I know that we had some reports and some leaks about this potentially being a move about a week ago. The use of Nurkic for DeAndre Ayton swap, I think it's been on the table for a little while. So we kind of got some people talking about it, thinking about it, getting used to what this move could potentially mean. And it's interesting, right? Because in a vacuum, I think that Nurkic is not nearly as good as Ayton is right now. Nurkic has been fine since he had that injury a few years ago. Obviously, that really bad leg injury kind of took his career in a different direction. He hasn't been the same player as he was pre-injury. And he also signed what I thought was a pretty bad contract at the time. He's got 3 years left at around like $18 million per season, which is significantly cheaper than Ayton, who is at like 32, 33 for 3 years. So it is a little bit of money savings on a team that is paying a bunch of players a ton of money. Obviously Booker, Durant, and Bradley Beal. So they're going to save a little bit of money there. And then the rest of the pieces, a little bit more depth for them, right? They had to sign a bunch of guys in free agency in order to fill out this roster because the cupboard was entirely bare after the Bradley Beal trade. So they had to sign a bunch of veteran free agents. And, you add Nasir Little, Keon Johnson, and Grayson Allen into this mix. They're going to have to make maybe another move or just end up cutting a couple of guys that they signed this summer, right? Because I believe that they are over... they traded out 2 players and brought in 4, and I think their roster was already full prior to that. So they're going to have, I think, 17 players. They got to get down to 15. So a little bit of a camp competition. I would imagine, obviously, Nurkic is safe. I think Nasir Little is safe. He signed an extension for, I think, 4 years, $28 million, I want to say. And that was pretty good value for a younger wing player that still showed some potential. I'm a little surprised Portland threw him in here. But I think Little can maybe be a decent piece for Phoenix. Grayson Allen, he's had his controversy, but he is a proven, competent role player on really good teams. So I think he's going to fit in and be fine there. Keon Johnson is a guy I could see maybe being a roster casualty. Was a first-round pick a few years ago to the Clippers. Ends up in Portland, now to Phoenix. Maybe he turns into something. I think he's a guy that's a little bit undersized for the position that he really should be playing. He's kind of been at shooting guard. I really think he's more of a 3. Been a little bit undersized and hasn't really done much. He's super athletic though. Great dunker, super athletic guy, can jump out the gym. But I'm not really sure how much of a potential there is left. It feels like kind of a throw-in for the Blazers. And I don't know if the Suns really care about him, so I could maybe see him being one of the guys who ends up getting waived whenever they have to do this roster cut down. Because, just real quick, this roster, from Durant down to Toumani Camara, that's 15 players, and then Saben Lee and Udoka Azubuike are on 2-way contracts. So that's 15 here, and they sent out Ayton and Kamara and brought in 4 players back. So roster max is 15. They're going to have to waive 2 guys. I think Keon Johnson probably will be one of those. And then for the other player, I think all of these are safe. Maybe Damian Lee, maybe Drew Eubanks. Watanabe should be safe. Keita Bates-Diop maybe could be a cut. Bol could maybe be a cut. Metu could maybe be a cut. Jordan Goodwin could maybe be a cut. Wainwright could maybe be a cut. So all of these guys, it's going to be a competition in camp. We'll see who ends up winning the roster spot, but that's kind of a minor footnote, just something that interests me. And then let's go to the Heat. So Miami misses out on Damian Lillard. They were obviously the number one rumored destination for months now. It appeared to be that they were the only team on Damian Lillard's list, that they were the only team he would accept a trade to. There was reports that anywhere else he wasn't going to show up to camp, he wasn't going to play, whatever. Those have been quieted, right? He's going to go to Milwaukee. He's going to show up. He wanted to play with Giannis, so he will be playing there. But the Heat maybe played a little bit too much of hardball here, didn't quite offer their best package, and they end up missing out on Lillard. Now, there's always the possibility that they can pivot now to somebody like Drew Holiday because they have the Kyle Lowry contract. They can throw in maybe one of their younger guys. That's not going to take as much value as they would have had to give up to get Damian Lillard. They can maybe get Drew Holiday for cheaper. Even James Harden is another guard who's out there, obviously. So I don't think the offseason is quite over for Miami. But missing out on this, it does hurt, right? A guy who clearly wanted to go there. They had the stuff, not all the stuff, right? It's clear that their package wasn't the best, but maybe they didn't offer everything, right? They weren't necessarily willing to give up a guy like Nikola Jovic or Jaime Jaquez, who they just drafted, and all of the picks that they have in their cupboard. Because obviously it wasn't going to be Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo, so everything else being on the table. Tyler Hero, maybe not as attractive of an asset as they would assume. The Kyle Lowry contract is just kind of there for filler. And then, like I said, those 2 rookies and then whatever picks that they end up having. So, missing out, it hurts. But I think that it could end up being okay considering that they maybe didn't even have a chance in the first place. Like I said, their package wasn't good enough, as well as the fact that there are still players out there, all-star level players out there. Would not be shocked at all to see them make a move for Drew Holiday. Even James Harden, like I mentioned, I think the Heat are still going to be lurking, trying to find a way to upgrade. If it's not now, could happen at the deadline. But this Heat roster is not finished. I don't think it is. And then the Raptors, the other team that had picked up a lot of traction in the last week or so as the potential dark horse candidate for Damian Lillard. We're getting reports now that they were not willing to include OG Anunoby, which I guess that's the Raptors' way, right? They love, especially Masai Ujiri, he loves to, really try to get the very most out of the assets that he has. If he doesn't absolutely love the deal, he's not going to do it. And so Anunoby being a guy that has been out there on the trade market, it's clear that, he's been at least to some degree available, whether that's for a ton of picks or maybe they're kind of trying to play up his value a little bit, right? There was teams interested in him at the deadline last year. He doesn't end up getting traded. Now, he could have potentially been a centerpiece for Damian Lillard. That doesn't end up going through. So the Raptors continually do this with their players. If Masai Ujiri doesn't absolutely love the contract or love the trade, he's not going to be pulling the trigger. And I think that can get them into trouble sometimes. Now, would I have loved to see Dame in Toronto? Not necessarily. I don't think it was the perfect roster for him. Even if they got him, you're giving up on Anunoby, maybe some other players. I don't think it's a title caliber roster right away. Clearly, Milwaukee gives him a better chance to compete. So I think that in general, it's a good thing that this didn't go through. It's just interesting the Raptors kind of do this song and dance very frequently. We'll see what ends up with OG. I think he's still on the trade block. We could see him moved at the deadline still. A lot of teams interested in him, but the asking price is very high, and the fact that they weren't even willing to throw him in for Damian Lillard speaks a lot about how Masai Ujiri likes to do business. So missing out on Damian Lillard, I don't think it's the end of the world for Toronto either, but just a little bit interesting. And then real fast on Drew Holiday, Miami is obviously a destination here. They have the Kyle Lowry contract, maybe throw in a pick or two or one of their younger players. I think that would probably get it done. I think that would be a great fit. They're looking for a guard. Obviously, they can kind of move on to plan B from Lillard, like I talked about. We've heard the 76ers as a potential destination where he started his career. I think that would also be a really good fit. There could potentially be a James Harden thing. I don't know if he would really end up in Portland. I don't think that really makes much sense. But potentially going to a third team like the LA Clippers still, maybe. There could be a three-way team deal there. Or the Clippers could be in play for Drew Holiday. They're looking for a guard, maybe instead of Harden. If the asking price is too high, they engage the Blazers and go with Drew Holiday to fill their point guard void. There's some stuff out there with the Celtics and Malcolm Brogdon. Could they get involved on Drew Holiday? Or Malcolm Brogdon going somewhere else? There's lots of different options, permutations here. I would anticipate, like I said earlier in the video, I would expect Drew Holiday to be traded maybe before training camp starts next week, potentially as soon as like tomorrow. I think this could happen very quickly based on just kind of the trends that we've been seeing with this. But if not, they might draw it out to the deadline. He plays the first half of the season in Portland, gets shipped somewhere else. Depends on where they feel like his value is at. But I would not anticipate him staying with the Blazers for very long. So there you go. The NBA season is back, guys. We've got training camp starting next week, media day, all that stuff. I think that there will be some more smoke, some more fire for the rest of this week. Like I said, Drew Holiday, James Harden, still a couple of moves left to be made, and I think this Lillard domino is going to kickstart some other things potentially rumbling, some other things happening. But very, very interesting trade. To sum this all up, I think the Suns roster is finally done now. They've got a lot of depth, at least a lot more than we thought they might have, so that's interesting. Blazers didn't get maybe as much as I thought they would, but we'll see what they end up getting for Drew Holiday. And the Bucks, maybe the favorite in the East now. It's going to be them, the Celtics. I think Miami is still lurking. Like I said, I don't think they're done. They could make another move. I still really like the Cavaliers. I know that they kind of flamed out last season, but a couple of the moves they made this offseason, maybe another year to gel, some of their young guys get a little better. Cleveland's going to be lurking. The Knicks are going to be in there. Philly, I don't really believe in, but we'll see what happens with Harden. So the East is really competitive. I think this is great for the league. We get to see Lillard on a bona fide title contender for the first time maybe in his career ever. So that'll be fun. I'm excited to watch this happen, and we'll see you guys in the next one.